welcome. I am Matthew Stibbe, and as you can see, not actual size. I have a new remote control for the presentation, so this is going to be very exciting. I run a company called Articulate Marketing, and we do copywriting for various companies, you know, little startups you may not have heard of. Hands up or shout out if you're from Microsoft. I know we've got one here. Hey! And Outbound. Hey! And Arts Ed. Hey! Thank you. And if you're in Chiswick. Hey! All right, good. Well, welcome everybody. Why are we here? Why are we here? Free beer, sunny evening. Fantastic. What else? Well, does anyone want to suggest what we're here to do? Why did you come? Why did you choose to pitch up and listen to me rabbit on at you? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone?
To learn how to speak to the real world without sounding completely stupid.
To learn how to speak to the real world without sounding completely stupid. Yes. Anyone else?
Wanted to avoid using so many cliches in my emails.
Uncliched emails, fantastic. Yes, I could do with that too. Any more? Move people to action, fantastic. Yes, all of this, and I think the biggest problem that we face is this, just the sort of tidal wave of information that we face every day, right? This is my life today. There's some emails, there's some Twitter. Hello, welcome, welcome. No, head towards the bar. That's the most important thing. Head towards the bar. In fact, if there's any doubt about it, head towards the bar and the loos are through the door beyond the bar. So that's the two main things you need to know. Yeah, so it's cutting through the noise, right? It's kind of getting your message across. You know, if you're an acting person and you want to get seen, if you're a business and you want people to take action, you're writing an email and you want them to pay attention and do what you say. And this is the enemy. This is the enemy. Does anyone know what this stands for?
Too long didn't read.
Too long didn't read. Does anyone, hands up if this is new to you today? For the first time in my life, I'm actually at the cutting edge of a meme, of a trend. This is a new thing to me. I learned this last week. Too long didn't read, right? We have this in our lives. We've got emails and books. Hands up if you've seen an advert today. Hands up if you've read an email today. Hands up if you looked at a website today. Right. This is our lives, right? Constant tidal wave of information. And so if you're writing, you've got to get through that noise, get people to understand, pay attention, listen, believe, take action. I like this. I picked this up off the internet today as well. Too long didn't read. And I promise you, this is the last cat picture. I've heard that Chiswick people like cat pictures. So. The other problem that we have is shrinking attention spans, or at least perhaps overloaded attention. That probably is fairer. And people expect information to be dropped in. I don't know if you've noticed this trend on TV shows where they spend the first 5 minutes at the beginning telling you what's going to come up, and then there's an advert break, and then they spend 5 minutes telling you what they just told you and what's going to come up in the next bit. It's like half the program is just kind of repeating itself because you can't pay attention. People want everything summarized down to a little perfect little one word, right? This is the challenge that we have. It's just like, oh, I can't be bothered to think, I'm too busy. Give it to me in one word. So, I am here this evening to talk about my experience as a copywriter over the last decade, crikey, and as a freelance journalist for Wired and Director and people like that for a little bit before that. And a little bit geeky stuff. I ran a computer software company for a while as well. Oh, I thought we had another punter there, but no. Okay, so I'm going to talk about copywriter stuff. This is going to be another tidal wave of information, but I've got you sat here and you're going to pay me attention. So we're going to start with a bit of science. Well, sciencey stuff, right? This is how people read, okay? You think your experience of reading as a human brain is of something that is smooth and continuous from left to right and top to bottom. Or if you're Japanese, maybe left to right and you know, it's that way, and if you're Arab, it's the other way. But your brain sort of puts the words together in a continuous flow. In the same way that when you go to the movies, you think it's animated, people are running around, Superman's jumping from building to building, but actually it's just 24 frames a second flashing up of light on the screen, 24 still images. Your brain does the work. Same thing, you think you're seeing a sort of goldfish bowl around you of everything, but your brain is actually putting that together from little snapshots of what's going on. So this is like one of those sing-along karaoke things. I've never done karaoke, so I'm thinking of the old-fashioned, you know, sing-along TV thing. Your brain is going to spend about 1/4 of a second resting your eyes on the words and skipping forward, right? Bum, 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 bum. This is what's happening, and this is how your brain absorbs writing. Occasionally, it skips back. It goes, oh, I missed that, I didn't understand it, I got thrown off, I got confused, I need that bit of information again. You want lots of the dum-da-dum-da-dum-da-dum and not so much of the ah. So this is the first thing I want to give you. This is the first sciencey bit. Here's the second sciencey bit. Anyone seen this before? I know you have, Phil. Anyone else? Okay, so it's eye tracking. They put a camera on top of a screen. They sit, in this case, 230 people in front of the screen, and they track where their eyeballs look. And your eyeball, when it's looking at a page of text on a website, is doing the same thing. It's skipping about like a child on hot sand, right? So what you're actually seeing is people not reading. This is a picture of not reading, okay? What you've got here, the dark bits, are where people are reading the most, and the light bits, like over here, people aren't reading at all. Oh, I like that a lot. There's a picture here. People are looking at the picture. They're looking at the price. Here are some Google results. They're looking at the first 2 Google results, maybe a bit of the third and fourth. Goodness me, if you're down here, nobody's looking at you at all, right? So we can use this information to shape the text, the writing, whether it's an email or it's a presentation or it's a document or a website, instead of having it randomly happen, you know, oh, I'm going to put some stuff there and some stuff there and hope people read it. No, I'm going to actually try and guide the reader to the bit that I think is important. Okay. This is a diagram, not Pac-Man. This is a diagram of 80% versus 20%. The 80% is the stuff on your web pages that people are not reading. In other words, according to research by Jacob Nielsen and others, people come to a website and on average they read 20% of each web page. On average they're giving you at best a minute or 2, perhaps less. If they like it, they'll stay. If it's information they actually want. But Jacob Nielsen, who is a guru of mine, describes website visitors as like animals. They're hunting in packs, trying to find the information they want. If they don't find it, they're moving on. So you have to understand that people are not going to read all the stuff you give them. What is the logical inference from the fact that people are only going to read 1 in 5 words or 20% of your website? Anyone?
Well, it could be write less.
It could be write less, couldn't it? Be more concise. Good. So, another little bit of science information and then we'll get into the copywriting stuff, right? Jacob Nielsen did some research where he took some text. Here it is. Tourist attractions in Nebraska. This is information that you were all hunting for, right? You wanted to know the most exciting tourist attraction, which I think is Carhenge. Yeah, look, Carhenge. I actually want to go to Carhenge. And you have to also understand there's like another few hundred words under here, but I didn't get to put it all on the page. He took this bit of random text off the internet and he made some interventions, some writing interventions into it with the objective of making it more readable, quicker to read, easier to remember, and what he calls subjectively more satisfying. In other words, people thought that the text was interesting, good, readable, high quality, right? Stuff that actually, if you were trying to write a web page or an email or a brochure or a CV or any kind of writing, you would like to be easier to read, more memorable, faster to read, and subjectively satisfying, right? And if I told you, by waving a magic wand, I can make all of those metrics double, I can make it twice as good, you'd be like, yay, fantastic, I've learned something. And here's what he did to achieve that. First of all, he made it more concise. As Nick said, write less text. write less stuff. Secondly, he made it scannable. Now you remember people's eyes moving all over the web page? With scannable text, look, it's little short paragraphs, it's little subheadings that are all capitalized, there are bullet points here. He's giving the brain and the eye a clue about where to look. Yes? So he's making it scannable. Third thing he did, making it more objective, right? Objective. So, if I show you the original text, can anyone shout out some of the non-objective words in this original text that he deleted?
Internationally recognised.
Thank you.
Scenic.
Yeah?
Large crowds.
Large crowds. Fantastic. All of that. So this is Nebraska Tourist Office selling the sizzle, not the sausage. Now I know we're always told in marketing you've got to sell the sizzle and the sausage, but actually if you take it out, it makes it more compelling. Why? Anyone hazard a guess as to why that is? Okay, most of you, all of you are English in this room? We are a cynical people. We are a cynical people. If you say this is the best thing since sliced bread, if I told you that, you'd be like, yeah, no. So we sort of discount hype. We discount marketing, yeah? So he made it objective. And the combination of those three very simple interventions doubled what he would call the readability of that text. Recall, time to task completion time, and subjective satisfaction. It's really simple. I mean, there's no rocket science. You don't have to be Shakespeare to do that. It's just mechanical editing. Okay. Next important tip. If I can give you one big thing to take away, it's this. Substitute short words for long words. Okay? I quite like this Will Self-Help book. I think Churchill said, short words are best, but old words when short are best of all. And I think that is a fundamental truth of writing. But it's been proved by Daniel Oppenheimer at Stanford University, who did a test where he took a piece of text, just some information, and then he replaced all the words with longer sort of synonyms of those words. And then he tested people's ability to read it, understand it, and kind of ask them, what do you think? Do you think the author of this text is intelligent or not? Now, the instinct we have is if we use long words, you know, we're important, we're clever, we're professional. Professional is the death word for writing. We're very, you know, Daniel Oppenheimer reckons the opposite is, in fact, the truth. And he said, in his report, and I'm going to read you the title here because I think it's funny, Consequences of Erudite Vernacular Utilised Irrespective of Necessity. Problems with using long words needlessly. And he concluded his report, one thing is certain. Write as simply and plainly as possible, and you will be more likely to be thought of as intelligent. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't you like to be thought of as intelligent? And that's how you do it. Okay, so there is the sciencey stuff. Right, now comes the copywriter secrets, the tricks of the trade, right? How do we get you to pay attention in this busy, complex, overloaded, information-rich world? Well, the first thing we do is we pick one thing to tell you about, or one thing at a time. This is a very famous advert. Has anyone seen this before? Yeah. I just found this today, but I was quite chuffed about it because I'd heard about it in the past. So what this is homing in on is how elegant, quiet, sophisticated, well-engineered, luxurious the car is. But they're just telling you this by saying how, you know, all you can hear is the clock. Apparently in the factory, the engineers who built the car were so upset about this, they said, oh, we must do something about that clock. It's obviously, you know, something's faulty with it. I quite like, though, just in the background, look, here are the charming kids in their riding outfits, and, you know, this is a nice country lane, and this is, you know, this is a lifestyle. But that messaging is sort of very subtle, it's in the background. And under here, there's a whole load of extra text telling you how luxurious it is. But it's one telling detail. If you can find the telling detail, that's the secret of good copywriting. And the challenge I sometimes have with my clients is, you know, on the homepage of a website, or the first page of a document, or the first paragraph of a document, they want to tell you everything, right? Oh, we've got to mention this, we've got to mention that, we've got to put this on the homepage, we've got to put that on the homepage. And the reality is you can't. If you try and squeeze everything in, you end up saying nothing. So There you go. That's the message. One thing at a time. The next thing we do is we tell stories, right? Because human beings are wired for stories. Yeah? This is what we are programmed to do. This is from the Pixar rules of storytelling. You've all seen Pixar films, right? Yeah. And hands up if you were ever a child. So we grew up with stories. Once upon a time there was, and then, and suddenly, and so, and they all lived happily ever after. Whatever, this is a sort of a narrative that's built into our brains. Well, we don't tell it always like that, but we might say, you know, your computer broke, and then you went to the Apple store, and then you bought a Mac, and then, and suddenly, and, you know, you'll, whatever. By the way, I'm using Apple examples this evening. Sorry, Microsoft. I decided to pick on somebody that I didn't actually work for a change. Right, so the next thing we do is we structure information so that we don't drop it all in on one go, right? This is a classic example of an inverted pyramid. At the top, in the headline, is the key information. It is the distilled summary, one thing, bit of information. If you read nothing else, you get something from that. Then you get a slightly unpacked, more detailed version of the information, okay? And then you get much more detailed versions of the information, and because it's a website, this is actually stuff you can click on. But in a newspaper article, you get the headline, you get the stand first, and then you get progressively unpacked levels of detail. This is an inverted pyramid. Journalists use it all the time. And now when you read a newspaper, you go, oh, I see what they're doing. And it's standard. So these are some of the tricks that we use to kind of break through, hook you in. And my old editor, Matthew Rock, who lives down the road but isn't here, sadly, he said you've got to win the reader every page at a time. You've got to win them on the cover, you've got to win them on the table of contents, you've got to win them on every article at the headline with the stand first, you've got to get them to turn the page. It's a constant battle for people's attention. Okay, how do we persuade? Right? If you want to get people to buy something, take action, hire you, cast you, yeah? All of these things are important. And I want to turn here to Robert Cialdini. There he is, looking very persuasive. He wrote a book called Influence. Influence is sort of the Bible of psychological manipulation. It's very interesting to think about why we do things. And I think a lot of times we make shortcuts. I don't know, you go into a supermarket, there are 50 different types of shampoo. It's almost impossible to pick one. You go into a computer store and the guy is trying to sell you stuff and it's very difficult to work out what you want. So how do we make decisions? Any ideas? What do we use to cut through all of that and figure out the right thing to do?
Recommendations?
Recommendations? What other people tell us? Sure.
Do we like it?
Right, so maybe we substitute one bit of information for another. Does it look good? Therefore it must be good. Beauty is truth and truth beauty, and so forth. Yeah, so let's look at some of the things that he's talking about. Here is an example of scarcity. It's a simple example of scarcity. There are lots of tablets in the world, but there's only one iPad. Yeah? It's a subtle one here, but if you are an art dealer, for example, what happens to the prices of art when the artist dies? They go up, because can't make any more, right? They're not making any more land, therefore house prices, for some reasons, seem to go up all the time. Scarcity is a way of getting you to do something sort of perhaps against your better rational judgment. And if you can communicate scarcity, that's a powerful way of persuading people. Here's another example, social proof. As Aileen said, doing what other people do. So loving it is easy, that's why so many people do. This is conveying to you the subtle message, other people like the iPhone, therefore you should have one. Hands up if you've got an iPhone. Right, why did you get an iPhone?
Because it's great.
Because it's great? Hands up if you've got an iPhone and you got it because somebody else had one, showed it to you. Okay, well, I would have thought there would be more. iPhones, particularly sort of viral marketing, people get one because other people have got them and go, look, I've got an iPhone, it's fantastic. Okay, in this case, also, here's another example, JD Power. Okay, they are giving consumer awards, they're telling people what to buy and recommending. And this is another example of social proof. And this is the human instinct, safety in numbers, right? 10,000 lemmings can't possibly be wrong. Authority. Okay, so if you've ever seen a famous footballer, pop star, politician endorse something, tell you to do something, they are using their fame, their reputation, their authority to persuade you. What does, what's he called? He kicks footballs and he's just retired. David Beckham. Yes, I saw an advert today with David Beckham, and he was wearing a wristwatch designed for pilots. I'm pretty sure David Beckham is not a pilot. Why would I, as a pilot, buy a wristwatch that David Beckham is recommending? Because he's David Beckham. It's a mystery to me. Football's a sport I don't follow. In this case, the authority that they are relying on actually is their own. It's the A6 chip, right? They're bamboozling you with some technical information, a bit of voodoo stuff, right? BMW does this. It's got some double overhead camshaft or something. They invent a name for some part of their engine, and they say it's got it. No one else has got it. It's very technical. This is a kind of authority as well. And if you can find something in your business or find something in your track record or your CV or your performances, that this is, and maybe put a name to it or maybe get a bit of endorsement for it. If you're an actor, if you've worked for a famous director, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Then there is this feeling of commitment and consistency. This is a very powerful psychological motivator, right? This chap, guess which computer he's got?
Dell.
Obviously, fat Dell fanatic, right. And then there's an old joke, isn't there? There's nobody more zealous than a convert. But I think what happens is that we kind of make a decision about something. I am now an Apple fanboy, right? So I actually have to defend that decision. I'm not going to climb down from it. I'm going to actually wear that with some pride and some satisfaction. I'm going to bore my friends about how Macs don't crash, okay, or how elegant they are. I won't mention the fact they cost 3 times as much. So you've sort of gone through a one-way door. You've put your finger in a finger trap, and you don't want to admit you've made a mistake. And in fact, you are committed to it. I think also Apple does this very subtly in other ways. They have the Genius Bar, right? Now, if any other company did a Genius, or suggested a Genius Bar, it'd be, oh, we mustn't do that because we don't want to appear too arrogant. But Apple know that actually if they have that, what they're implying to Apple buyers is you're kind of a genius too. You're kind of, and I always wondered, you remember the Apple and the Mac and PC advert where actually John Hodgman was the PC. He's kind of lovable. I like John Hodgman. He's nice. I have no antipathy to John Hodgman at all. The guy who played the Mac was a real jerk. I did not like him at all. And yet, and Steve Jobs' great insight into marketing is, if you don't have somebody hate you, nobody is going to love you. Okay. People like buying from people they like. Right? Likability is another motivator. And this is the secret Apple sales manual from the Mac store, from the Apple store, right? This is online, this is very exciting. And here are instructions on empathy for Apple employees. Look, I want an iPad, but I need a mouse. I know how you feel. I thought that at first, but actually it's really intuitive, right? They're establishing rapport, they're establishing some empathy, they're trying to be likable, yeah? This is a very subtle piece of manipulation. If you can be likable, if you can establish that, you can also win converts. Reciprocity. If I can give you something, you feel obligated to give me something back. So, everyone here who's on an invited guest ticket, you owe me. Right? Here is Apple giving you iTunes. You can download this. If you've got a Mac, PC, doesn't matter, it's free. I mean, of course, you're going to buy some tunes and stuff, and you're much happier to use iTunes now you've got it than some other Windows media player or something like that, or some open source thing. But it's reciprocity. It's something for nothing. You feel obligated to reciprocate. And they're very good at overcoming objections. What happens if my computer goes wrong? I want some human being to talk to. So they put human beings on their website. Actually, try calling Apple with a problem. They'll send you to the Apple store where you have to make an appointment and you queue and you pay £300 to have your broken iPhone replaced. Apple has, in my opinion, I might be wrong, pretty much the worst warranty deal going for a computer. And yet, the perception is you get better support. Interesting thing. Right. Writing tricks. So now we come to the sort of tricky stuff. Here's a little tip. Try and use the most common words in the English language. Not just short words, but actually what Alan Sugar, I'm almost embarrassed to quote him, but it's a lovely phrase, export English, right? The simplest language you can use. This is a tool, bizarre name, UpGoer5. You type in any piece of text and it checks it against 1,000-word vocabulary that are the most used words in the English language. It's very hard to write something that's going to pass this test, but it's a useful tool. Ask questions. Ask the reader's questions. Think about the information that you know that the reader would like to know. Research out the stories. I find doing interviews, even for something I know quite well, a topic I know quite well, ringing somebody up and having them explain it to me in their terms is a really good way of understanding it. I often find with clients who are, when I ask them, well, you know, tell me about this, oh, I couldn't do your job, it must be very difficult being a writer, I'm rubbish at that, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, well, that's fine, because I'm here to help. Tell me about your product, or tell me what you do, or tell me about the company. And then they proceed over 20, 30 minutes on the phone to give me an incredibly eloquent, succinct, detailed, thoughtful exposition of whatever it is they're talking about. It's almost like they feel like they can't write, but they can talk. So asking questions and answering questions, good old Rudyard Kipling, this is a secret to good writing. Here's a much simpler tip. Replace the long word with the short word. This is a partial list from the Plain English Society. It's very well worth going and downloading their PDF and expunging, deleting, all these long words. And that, contracts are particularly bad at this, but actually it's very easy for websites and letters and things to kind of get all flowery and formal, because you feel like, oh, I want to be professional, I want to be taken seriously, I want people to agree with me. But shorter is better. Right, the passive. Can someone explain what the passive voice is to me? Any grammarians in the room? Okay, well, I'm not going to. But this is how you recognize it, right? There is no subject. There is nobody doing the doing, okay? So if you can add the words "by zombies" to the end of a sentence, it is very likely to be a passive sentence, right? So that's going to apply the zombie test. The mat was sat on by zombies, passive. Mistakes were made by zombies, passive. The book was stolen by zombies. Right, you get the picture. You want to aim. There are some cases where the passive, if you make it, you do it by choice, deliberately. Okay, if you're conscious of it, you understand how you're using it. Then maybe you want to emphasize something. You put that thing first, and then you turn the sentence around. But generally, you want to get rid of the passive voice in your writing, because the brain comes along, dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum, I can't find a subject. And the brain starts looking for that, and then your eyes skip back, and then you lose interest in what you're reading, and then you turn the page, you flip the article, you go back to the next web page, bang, you've lost the reader. Why? You used the passive voice because you didn't want to admit that it was me, or it was us, or we. Okay, so passive detection kit by zombies. This is the biggest tip for the evening. Here is another bit of text. Can anybody tell me why they think I like this? I know why I like it, but can anyone guess? And nobody, if you've seen this before, no cheating.
It sort of flips the convention on its head, but it's not the usual yo-yo.
Yeah.
So therefore, what you expect this to be, which is the usual, it's not.
Doesn't look like a click-through license, does it? No, like 20 pages of legal text written by some lawyer somewhere, which, hands up if you have actually read a click-through license on anything ever. One person? Why? Huh? You're a lawyer. Okay. Were you being paid to do it? Yeah, I will read. Here's my offer to you. I will read as many click-through licenses as you will pay me to, okay? The reality is we don't. However, this is giving you information that's actually useful to you, right? It's giving you choices that are actually pretty clear, and it's telling you in everyday language, yeah, there's a bit of legal stuff there if you want it, fine. But it's talking directly to the reader. How is it talking to the reader? Anyone? How do you know it's talking to the reader?
It says like,
You.
none of the data actually tells us who you are. It's making like declarative statements.
Yeah, it's exactly. Us, you, we. It's a conversational approach to it. When we're at school, and particularly when we're at university, and especially when we get into advanced degrees, we think, oh, you know, I can't use the first person. First person is I or we. I can't say I can't say we. And often in companies, we're kind of really nervous about saying, you know, using the company name. It's all got to be very sort of hesitant. You know, people may think, oh, perhaps companies prefer to do this. No, it's fine. Talk to people. We, you, us. It's fine. I give you my permission. Okay. I also give you permission to give instructions. Tell people what you want them to do. Okay? This is absolutely fine. And especially now when you're trying to get people to take action, you're trying to get people to read through and do something, you're trying to get them to sign up as a reseller or a partner, you're trying to get them to buy your product, sign up on your social network, whatever it is. Say, in order to take advantage of this offer, go online today. Give people instructions. It's also a way of avoiding using a name, using a company name, using a subject, saying you or us or we if you feel embarrassed about it. So, give instructions. Right, here's another classic copywriter's trick. Defensive language. Defensive language. Really nervous about sort of being categorical. So, we use things like would, could, might, may. We don't want to be specific, so up to, around, more than. We don't, but people react to facts. People react to data. People react well to specificity. There is what Stephen Colbert, anyone know? You know Stephen Colbert, yeah? He calls truthiness, right? It's like the truth, but sort of not quite. There's truthiness in data. There's truthiness in numbers. When I was at university, my history tutor said, Matthew, you know, it would be such a good idea if you would put a few dates in your essays. Truthiness. Okay. This is something that at Articulate we care very passionately about, having thought about it quite a lot and argued back and forth when we were writing our style guide. We don't like punctuation. We don't like anything that gets in the way of that smooth, progressive transfer of our information into your brain. So, we object to ampersands. We object to percent signs. We like words. We don't like capitalization. It's a common thing, actually, in technology companies, maybe in others too, to capitalize a noun because it might be a product. It might be a trademark. But actually, put it in lowercase. Also for headlines, subheadings, capitalize the first letter, make the rest of it look like a sentence. Why? It's easier to read. You're less likely to have one of those saccades, one of those dropout moments. Yeah? Spelling out numbers. I think, I might be wrong about this, I think we now have decided to also write the word 10. This is a big revolution with much, philosophical and existential angst. Yes, we now say 10. AGFA. Another gratuitous four-letter acronym, right? People stumble over these. If it's DVD, we all know what a DVD. We do all know what a DVD is, right? Yeah, yeah. But if it's CMS, hands up if you know what a CMS is. Okay. Over half, more than half. Yeah, content management system, if you were wondering. So you need to use the right acronyms for the right audience, and if they're not sure, spell it out or describe it. Okay. I particularly hate trademark bugs. I would like to abolish them, but you have to use them because they're speed bumps. So we are punctuation minimalists at Articulate. We even take out, if you write EG or etc., we now internally, we don't put full stops in that. We just like, punctuation, let's get rid of it. Right, here is a 4-word style guide template. Very important, I think, to have a style guide, to think through how you want to communicate with people, how you want to use language, how you want to be different from other people. And this is my little template. Right, who are you writing for? This is very helpful to understand this. education level do they have? What else do they read that you could copy, that you could emulate, that you could relate to? You could take to your boss and go, our audience all read computing, or they all read Engadget, or they all read The Times. So we want to write like that. We don't want to write like your corporate BS. We want to write like stuff people trust and believe. Okay. Viewpoint. Here's an example of a viewpoint. Write from the viewpoint of a trusted advisor. Write from the viewpoint of a personal friend. Write from the viewpoint of a techie genius. Think about where you're coming from and what that means for language. If you choose the right viewpoint, you're going to change the way you write. What language is appropriate? Here's an example. Use good business English. Use the language of school children. Use the words of nursery rhymes. Use techie language. Yeah? Pick the right sort of language. And structure. This isn't so much about inverted pyramids and story spines and things like that, but an example of structure might be create a conversation with the reader. Might be bombard them with as much information as they can absorb in 2.5 hours. But think about how you want to engage them. At the very least, think about writing, think about style. These are two very good books. There's some slightly iffy bits in here that I've become aware of, but it's still very readable and it's thoughtful. You can actually sit down and read this one, Strunk and White, half an hour on the train. It's actually, it looks really big here, right, because it's projected, but actually it's that size. Yeah, it's like that, and it's very cheap and it's fun to read and interesting. You will be a better writer if you read that. Right, how do we write headlines? When I say headlines, right, because I'm an ex-journalist, I'm sort of recovering, my name's Matthew, I'm a recovering ex-journalist. I mean headlines in a magazine sense. But, depending on what context you're coming from, you can hear tweet, you can hear Facebook post, you can hear email subject line. It's the same thing. It's the invitation to the party. It's the bit that they read before they read the rest of what they're going to read. Yeah? So headlines is all of that thing. It's that top stuff. Right. Anyone know what this is? Seen this before?
Is it someone named Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah, that's it. Theory is you need these things, food, shelter, sex, to exist. That's sort of fundamental. If you don't have that, you go extinct, right? And then you move all the way up to self-actualization, which is sort of a luxury need, right? You can't have self-actualization if you're starving to death. So this is stuff that motivates people. This is stuff that drives us. Why should they read your headline? Why should they read what you're going to say? Why should they read your copy? Well, let's have a look at some examples. So, yes, well, okay, losing weight isn't really about food, but it's about nutrition. So there's a lot of sex up there, for sure. I think there's a certain amount of, how can I put it, belonging, this idea of being part of a group. There's certainly some fashion, there's some, trends, there's some, I know some information that I share with other people who are reading this, yeah? So, and there's quite a lot of self-actualization going on. So these are psychologically appealing to those basic instincts. And your headlines, subject, email, subjects, whatever, can do the same thing. Here's a little bit more upmarket, a bit more grown-up stuff. Same thing, right? Sex, belonging, food, self-actualization, same stuff. Here is the secret of writing a great headline. Write 50 of them and pick the best one. Ouch, right? I have to admit, in nearly 14 years of professional paid writing, I've never taken this advice, but I'm confident that it would work. I probably have written maybe a dozen attempts at something, and sometimes when clients go, we don't like the title, can you come up with another one? I've probably sat there and gone, oh, try this one, try this one, try this one, try this one. Donald Murray, who wrote this book, which, by the way, of all the books I'm recommending tonight, this is, I think, the best, the most entertaining, the most interesting, insightful. If you're interested in how journalism works, this book will tell you. And he's no slouch as a writer, right? He's got a Pulitzer Prize, so it's a well-written book in its own right. But this is his recommendation: write 50 leads. Now, his 50 headlines. His idea, his sense is, if you do that, the rest of the story will present itself because you'll have got it all straight in your head by the time you've got to the end of that list. Yeah? You know, you'll have come at the story from so many different ways. You know what you want to say. Here are some tips for writing better headlines. Alliteration. Yeah? Using the same letter at the beginning. This is an Apple headline, S, S. It's not just smaller, it's smarter. Right? It just emphasizes the point you want to make. These are rhetorical tricks. Rhyme. Well, Apple aren't rhyming, you know, it's not like a nursery rhyme, but they're using end rhymes here. S, S, able, able. And that, again, gives a little bit more emphasis on the words that you want to use. Repetition. Now, you know, it's quite hard. I get picked up by proofreaders for repeating things, and I think I'm doing it very cleverly, you know, with intention, and it just looks like I'm lazy writing. But here is an example from an Apple webpage using the same word breakthrough. And obviously what they want you to think is, it's new, it's a breakthrough. Using an analogy. This is another way of getting through the noise. Don't just describe it, get it into their brain with something that's physical, tangible, finely crafted watch. Contrast. This is sort of ironic twisting of things. So here they are contrasting the big picture with the details. Here they are contrasting 3 million with half an inch. Apple just sort of write, I don't know how they do it. They must have a team of really well-trained monkeys somewhere just kind of bashing this stuff out. Did you know that if you put an infinite number of monkeys into a room with an infinite number of typewriters, eventually they will write, hey, hey, with the monkeys. Write bold statements, right? Be a bit aggressive. Remember, Steve Jobs, nobody is really loved unless somebody hates you, right? Just, you know, take a risk with a headline. Say something outrageous. Say something unexpected. Say something with intent. Really make your point. I like Buy It Like Buffett very, very much. What I really think is interesting is where the headline started. It's a real sort of factual, rather tedious thing, and they've sort of sexed it up and made it really compelling. News hook. Tell them something they didn't know. Use some information. Use a data point. Put a date in your essay. And the test for a headline is, when you've written it, is this a headline I would click on? Is this a headline I would happily tweet? Is it worth commenting? Does it provoke? Does it get a reaction? Does it say something interesting? And when I say headline, email, subject, tweet, Facebook, subheading, whatever, right? So, how do copywriters work, right? So we are, you know, in our darkened rooms with our bottles of whiskey and a cold flannel on our head, trying to meet our deadlines and get the words out, right? But actually there are some tricks and techniques and things that we do as copywriters at Articulate and I guess elsewhere that help. And I'm going to offer them up to you now. The first one, write every day. Write something every day. Ideally, write 500 words as a minimum. You know, get into it, do something, even if it's not very good, even if you're not happy with it, even if it's not for publication. Just developing that fluency, that sort of feeling of comfort with words, that feeling of not censoring yourself is a really, really powerful way of sort of unlocking your inner copywriter. So we've got this little calendar here, ticking off every day, I've written something, I've written something. If you were to write 1,000 words a day, you could write a really substantial novel in a year, right? A novella, short novel, 60,000 words. Write 1,000 words a day and you keep at it religiously, you could write 6 of them. Somebody check my maths. Yeah, 6 of them. You write 6 novels a year. I mean, okay, you also have to do editing and find a publisher and have a job and all that stuff. You know, it's astonishing how much you can do if you just stick at it. And I like to use the analogy of a river and a rock. You know, rock is really, really strong and hard and difficult to break. But over time, with persistence, the river will win. A little bit every day is like the river. Next thing, hands up if you can touch type confidently. Most people. Great, okay, well that's good. I was more than I expected, but well done. You're a classy audience tonight. Learning to touch type is the single most powerful productivity tool you can have, right? You're writing, you're sitting at a computer all day writing emails, writing websites, doing stuff. If you can get fluency from your brain onto the screen, onto the page, without having to sort of stop and wait for your hands to catch up, or wait for correcting mistakes, it's going to speed you up. So learn to touch type. And here is Typefoo. So really easy to use. Access it in Chrome or download it on your Mac. It's free, and so all it asks for you is a bit of time and a bit of commitment and a bit of practice. And even a little bit of time practicing touch typing is going to make you faster. I don't think there was a good writer who was not also a fluent typist, at least since we invented the typewriter. Okay, say no to meetings, right? This is the biggest obstacle to producing copy. I'm going to get shot at if I get this wrong, but I think it is true to say that at Articulate we have one meeting a week amongst ourselves. Is that right? Yeah. It's a long meeting, but just one. And I have another one for my other business, Turbine, where I have to talk to the developers and sort of figure out what the hell they're doing and what we should do next. So I have 2 meetings a week. Yes, we talk to clients. Yes, we have sort of meetings and phone calls and conference calls and interviews. But actually, internally, we're trying to not have endless meetings. And I think meetings just disrupt your day. They get in the way. You have to go and sit in a room. You have 8 people in the room, and there's always one of them's going to talk about some distracting thing that's not relevant, and everyone else has to sit and listen. And I honestly, I do not know how some businesses actually get anything done. When I go in and see them, and I see people's diaries, and literally every hour they're going from one room to the next room, and they're all day in meetings. I don't know. Does anyone have a life that is like that? 8 hours a day of meetings? Yes. Yeah, a few. Okay. Well, don't show up. That's my recommendation. Just don't go. See if the world ends, right? My theory is actually, if you get to the end of the time before, it'll take a certain amount of time, and then people will start noticing you're not going to all these meetings, and that could be risky, right? It could be risky. But if you can make that time long enough for you to get some capacity to do some real work, get some actual stuff done, maybe do some writing, by the time they notice, you're already way ahead of everybody else. Yeah? So that's my theory about meetings. Don't turn up. And here, I absolutely adore this diagram. This is a table that shows you how much time you will save over 5 months by small improvements in changes in the way you work. Look, just 5 seconds a day, 5 times a day, right? So if you do something repetitively, and every time you do it, you can change the way you do it. You say 5 seconds, you do that 5 times a day. Over 5 years, that adds up to 12 hours. 12 hours! You could go to the park. Yeah, I mean, 12 hours is a lot of time. It's a lot of time. But what if you're going to a meeting every day for 2 hours that you don't have to do? Right? So let's say you're cutting out an hour's meeting every day. In 5 years, that's 2 months. 2 months of precious time. You could learn another language. You could learn a musical instrument. You could have a really long holiday. 2 months is an incredible amount of time. And all you have to do is not show up for a meeting every day. And if you just look at everything you do, Claire wrote an article the other day that suggesting it's time to bring back the time and motion study, right? Maybe you need to get a clipboard and a stopwatch and just look, what am I doing today? What can I cut out? How can I save some time? Here is a tip. Here is a little thing that could save you that 5 seconds, right? It could buy you back 12 hours over the next half decade. This is Microsoft Auto Text. So years ago, I was doing some work for a client for HP, and it was being co-funded by Intel. And we had to mention Intel processors a lot. And when we mentioned an Intel processor, we couldn't just write i5, Core i5. No, we had to write 3rd generation or 2nd generation Intel Core i5 processor with capital letters and trademarks. Yeah, so Tristan knows what I mean. So this is a lot of words, right? And I mean, I don't mind because I get paid by the word. But you've got to type all that. Well, with this little thing, you type i5 and it auto expands, like on your smartphone, that. So great, i5, i7, i3. So maybe there are frequent phrases that you can use that you could put into this, and it would automatically remember them, save you typing them. I learned this on Monday. I didn't even know this existed before, so I'm sharing some new information I've discovered in the field, and I'm bringing it to you. Multitasking, right? Matthew's recommendation, don't do it, okay? Because actually it makes you stupid and it makes things hard to remember and it's very hard to concentrate if you're trying to do your email and you're trying to write an article and you're listening to some music and you're, right? Fries the brain. There was an experiment done at UCLA where they had students doing card sorting exercise, so a test of concentration and attention. One group did it in silence, one group did it with some random noise. Fine, you know, they both did equally well, they both got the job done, but afterwards the people who had the random noise couldn't remember what they were looking at. And the people who didn't had silence, could remember what was on the cards. So multitasking, just even with music, even with a bit of noise, is just taking away a little bit of your brain. Okay, and it increases stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, right? So, you know, I don't know about you, but I could do with a bit more chilling out, a little bit less adrenaline. I could do with cutting out some multitasking. Which brings me to silence. Silence is an incredibly powerful writing tool. What I want you to do, I'm just going to ask you to be quiet for a few seconds and just listen, tune in to the different noises that you can hear and the feelings of maybe the air on your face and the thoughts bubbling up in your brain, and just pay attention to what's really going on, beginning now. Isn't there a lot happening? There's so much more in your capacity if you have some attention to give to it. And silence is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of mind. Silence is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of mind. What else do you need to do a good job as a writer? You need concentration, you need flow. I'm now going to read you the name of this guy who it's very hard to pronounce, and I looked it up and I might get this wrong. He's called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He is a Czech. Anyway, if you Google flow psychology, you will see his name. And his theory, his understanding is when you are doing something that requires a high skill level and a high level of challenge or high level of attention, you can enter into a flow state. So if you've played sport and you're in the game, you're skiing and you're in the zone, you're playing a video game and you're really kicking ass, you're writing and you've got the whole article in your head, you're writing a computer program and you know exactly how that program's going to run without even compiling it. This is the state of flow. Do you recognize this? Have you experienced flow?
Yeah.
Do you experience it a lot? Yeah. So, this is the most productive state that we can be in when we're trying to write or trying to concentrate. And every time there's a phone call, every time your instant messaging pings, every time your phone goes bzzz and something's happening, this interrupts that flow state. It takes you out of that moment and puts your mind and your attention somewhere else. So, what does that suggest you need to do in order to concentrate and have flow? Remove distractions. Put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Close your email client. Put your phone on mute or in another room. Shut the door. There was some research done, and it's a beautiful book called Peopleware. It's a classic about, you know, people in companies are very interested in productivity, especially programming companies, software companies. I was a software entrepreneur. I was very interested in productivity. And I read this book, and they said you've got to give everybody a 2-person office. And I'm not doing that. I can't afford it. When you start looking into the productivity benefits of allowing people to shut out distractions, the payoff is gigantic. This is the E factor, right? This is their way of measuring how productive people could be, how conducive your working environment is to flow. Uninterrupted hours, meaning the time you can spend working without having to go to a meeting, without the phone ringing, without the email pinging, without you being distracted from the thing that you want to do, versus the amount of hours you actually spend in the office. And they found that they measured in different organizations, different companies, ratios of 0.1, which is kind of horrible. That means that for every 10 hours that an employee is sat in the office, they're doing 1 hour of productive work. Imagine you're writing a salary check every month and you're thinking, well, 90% of that's wasted. That's crazy. the best they measured was 0.38. So maybe 4 hours out of 10 was productive work, the other 6 hours, distracted. So in an environment like that, actually it really makes sense for people to go to meetings. How else can you shut out all the crap, right? It's kind of really weird. Meetings are a sort of an immune response to a corrosive, broken productivity environment. But if you fix the environment, you don't have to go to the meetings and everyone can get their job done. Notebook. This is a small thing, right? Every writer should have a notebook with them at all times. Here is mine, like my little red book. Why? Why? Why should you have a notebook with you?
So if you think of something, you can write it down straight away.
Yeah, and you've got a fantastic notebook. Show you a notebook to everybody. This is a very elegant little red notebook. Fantastic. You don't know when inspiration's going to strike. You don't know when you're going to have that lovely turn of phrase. You don't know when you're going to come up with the answer to something. And actually taking breaks, thank you Claire, taking breaks is actually part of a productivity regime, because if you walk away from what you're doing, your brain has a chance to digest and synthesize. Quite often you wake up in the morning, you've got the answer to the problem you had the night before. And you sat up all night, you wouldn't think of it. So, I also, a couple of little notebook hacks. Anyone, hands up if you've got a moleskin style of notebook in your life. Right, so suddenly out of nowhere, everyone's got moleskins. So here are some moleskin hacks. Little rubber band with a pen on it. There you go, now you've got a pen with you the whole time. Little sticky index cards, so you know where to start your next bit of writing. And this one's my favourite. Write the date, or date, start and end date of the moleskin of the notebook on the side, and instead of storing them spine out on your shelf, store them paper out, and then you can see which notebook you're looking for if you want to go and check something. I love that, I just saw that today. Moleskin hacks. Okay. Copywriters are very good at self-motivating. Find out what motivates you and apply it to yourself. There's a lovely website where you can sign up and say, if I don't lose this much weight by this date, or if I don't finish my first draft of my novel by this date, I'm going to donate $2,000 to the Republican Party. Or pick your, anti-charity of choice, or I'm going to donate $500 to the Ku Klux Klan, or some crazy, awful thing that you don't want to do. And you pay the money in, and then you get somebody to validate whether you've done it or not. And if you haven't done it, the money's going to those awful people, right? This is very motivating. Guilt and fear, very motivating. Cookies, very motivating. Deadlines, very motivating, right? One of the things that writers have to deal with, it's almost like being back at school, is this constant, endless deadline. And after a while, they sort of stop losing their fear. I mean, it just becomes a sort of normal part of life, like, I don't know, going to the gym or getting up in the morning or something. Okay, another deadline. I do like Douglas Adams' little joke. He said, I love deadlines. I love the sound they make as they whoosh past. But actually, they can be very powerful, very effective if you set yourself a deadline, if you maybe make a commitment to a writing buddy or something like that. That is very, very powerful. Okay, the unexamined life. The unexamined life is not worth leading, according to some old Greek guy. This is a thing I'm looking at the moment called rescue time, and it's like a tachometer on your computer. It tracks everything you do, every web page you look at, every application you open, and it then produces these sort of rather nerdy graphs about how much time you spent doing email, and how much time you spent doing planning, and how much time was productive versus the blue is productive time and the red is unproductive time, right? And then it starts giving you information like, you're very productive in the afternoon and you're not productive on the weekend at all. Well, okay, duh. But over time it's giving you more and more information, and that is useful feedback. You can also hit a button in it and you can say, I want to concentrate, and it blocks you from the applications and the websites that it knows distract you. That's quite useful. There is a website called Write or Die. Write or Die. No, it doesn't come and kill you, don't worry, it's not that scary. But what it does do is you're typing in your text into write or die, and if you've set it onto sort of uber draconian mode, if you don't keep writing, it starts randomly deleting bits of text. So, you're there for half an hour, you're not stopping writing, you're just going to keep going at it, right? And there are distraction-free editors, so you switch to them and then it won't let you get to anything else and you just see a blank page, almost like a typewriter page. There are lots of tricks and techniques. What I'm trying to impart to you is this idea that look at what you do and think about it, measure it, analyze it for a bit, and maybe there's a better way, maybe there's a newer, more efficient way. This is the copywriter approach, at least it is at Articulate. Here's a trick that I learned this week, thank you very much. Top of the hour, right? So every time it gets to 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you spend 15 minutes concentrating on the most important task for that day. And the rest of the hour, okay, your phone calls, meetings, emails, blah, 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 blah. Just 15 minutes. Probably what's going to happen, by the way, is you'll get so into it, you'll spend the rest of the hour doing it. It's a trick to hook you into that flow time. The other version of that is, anyone come across Pomodoro before? Yay, Pomodoro. This is, I actually found this on the internet today, an actual Pomodoro timer. So Amy, tell us about Pomodoro.
It's absolutely brilliant. You basically, I think, you set a time thing for, is it 55 minutes? If it's 55 minutes, you set your alarm for 55 minutes. They use that Pomodoro because it's an alarm. And you work solidly then for those 55 minutes, take a 5-minute break, then you do another 55, a 5-minute break, another 55, and then you can take a 15-minute break. But why it's so effective is for some reason, you know it's going to end. Well, you know it's going to end because you set your timer. For some reason that makes you just keep going. And then you find that you want to, in the 5-minute break, you want to carry on, but you have to really, really stop. And then you immediately want to start again. You think, oh no, I've only got another 55 minutes. It's very weird, but it really psychologically just keeps you moving. And it means that you do literally 3 hours of kind of solid, focused work. Line learning, for example.
Thank you. It's a good trick for making you concentrate. Here is a Pomodoro-style timer that's on Articulate Marketing website. It's free, and you can set that up, and it rings a little bell. You can also use it for meditation, so you can use it for that sort of tuning into silence stuff. Here is a sort of a theory of breaking down writing, okay? Now, most people think when they're writing, it's sat at a computer or sat at a typewriter. Writing, that's what you do. Actually, the majority of writing time is spent doing something else, at least for me, right? At least half of it typically is spent doing phone interviews, thinking about it, doing mind maps, sketching things out, doing some research, looking at the internet, probably playing Hex Empire, getting a bit distracted. But, it's not actually typing. Only about 1/6 of my time is actually spent typing, because if you can touch type, you can write 500,000 words in half an hour, no problem. So the actual, writing doesn't take very much time. If you know what you want to say, you can just get the copy out. And then 1/3 of my time, editing. We do a sort of peer editing, so, I write something, Claire will look at it, Claire writes something, I'll look at it, and it works very well to do that. So there's a lot of time is spent. So if you can divide up the work, actually the process of writing becomes much more efficient. Another thing we do, we look shit up, right? We don't know something, we go to Google and we figure it out, right? We don't guess and we don't pretend, we don't know, we don't ignore it, we don't leave it. We don't know how to spell something, we don't know the product name, we don't know the date of something. Google, best thing that happened to writers. Mind maps. Hands up if you use a mind map. Hands up if you've heard of mind maps. Right, don't need that. This, 2 letters, the most powerful 2 letters in the world of copywriting, right? It means to come, but it doesn't mean, it means to come later. I'm going to fill this in later, but it's a combination of letters that does not occur very often in the English language, right? There's an American rap group called Outkast that's spelt with a K, but 1 or 2 other examples. In some context, telephone kiosk, but generally it's not common. So if you just type capital T, capital K, and carry on writing, it saves you having to stop, interrupt your flow, interrupt your typing. You can say, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon on TK July 1969. Do you like how I know the month, but I don't know the date? TK 1969. And I'll carry on writing, and I haven't stopped, and I'll come back afterwards in the editing stage, and I'll fill that in. Or, if I'm really feeling lazy, TK amazing introductory sentence. Right, on to the next thing, right? Because that stuff's hard to do. But if you just get on with it, by the time you've written the rest of it, that first sentence, oh yeah, okay, fine, I can come in and do that now. So it's a way of just skipping past writer's block. And then you just do Control F, search for TK, and replace. Shitty first draft, right? The shitty first draft is a writer's friend. It is the antidote to writer's block. It's like, I don't care how bad it is, I'm just going to write it. Because I can fix it in editing, right? Like these guys, they can make me look fantastic in post-production by adding hair and the illusion of 3 dimensions. And Ernest Hemingway said that the first draft of anything is shit. So I have authority on my side there. My recommendation for Word is actually when you use that, sure, the squiggly lines, but click on the button that says spelling and grammar check and actually consciously do a grammar check and a spell check. Also use Microsoft Word, go to the options page and tick every box for it to check, right? Because there's a bunch of stuff in there that you can have it checked. Most people don't use it. Switch all of that on. You don't have to do what it tells you, but it's useful to be told. For example, Microsoft Word wants to capitalize the word Trojan because, people who come from Troy are Trojans. Well, we don't often write about the Trojan War. The other capital T, Trojan, is an American brand of condom, which we also do not write very often about. Otherwise, in the context of antivirus, it's a small t. So you do not have, just because Word wants to capitalize Trojan, you don't have to. You can tell I write a lot about viruses, can't you? Okay. Not about condoms, if you're wondering. Use proofreading, right? Pilgrims are a lot more than a turkey dinner. This is an advert in an American newspaper, tens of thousands of dollars. I would say that is a career-limiting typo, right? Not Texas, but taxes. This is a nice site. This is wordy.com. You pay them a modest amount of money, you upload your Word document, they proofread it for you, and you get an answer back within a couple of hours. Fantastic, right? I mean, we use them sometimes. We use some fantastically obsessive people in New Zealand to proofread sometimes. But proofreading is good. Even if you just give it to a mate in the office to check stuff, that works as well. Use readability statistics, right? Here is readability stats in Microsoft Word. Here is the readability tool on the Articulate Marketing website. Both free, both interesting. I'm not going to get into all the maths of this because of time. You can just go look it up on Wikipedia. But readability statistics is a very useful bit of mathematical feedback on how easy it is to read your copy, which is kind of interesting to know. Okay, we are very near the conclusion. So, I am going to give you permission to become a better writer. In fact, you are already a brilliant writer. You are already a brilliant writer. I give you my permission to write. Just do it. I love this. I give you my permission to be yourself. Find your own voice. Find your purple cow. SethGodin.com is his website, and you can read sort of purple cow, Seth Godin, little encouraging words on there as well. That's free. The book, I think you can download Purple Cow free as well from his website. So it's like, why wouldn't you read it? The idea of a purple cow is something remarkable, something unique, something different. And we all have a purple cow, and we all have something that we can say, some unique selling proposition, something exciting. The trick is to find it and to rehearse it and to keep saying it and to keep expanding it. And by some incredible magic property of purple cowness, the more you explore your purple cow, the more purple it becomes. I give you permission to experiment and have fun. Do you know who this is? Dr. Horrible. Huh? Neil Patrick Harris. Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. I highly recommend it. Not only does it have mad scientists, but it also has singing. So crazy, right? Rules and models are the enemies of genius and art, said William Hazlitt. Rules and models are the enemies of genius and art. So everything I have told you this evening is wrong if you can find a better way of doing it, okay? You have my permission to go and explore. And lastly, you have my permission to be as creative as you like. Go out and live, write, enjoy. This is on our street, and I just absolutely adore it. And with that, on that bombshell, anybody have any questions? Other than which way is the pub? Phil.
Yeah, I have a question, and it might be unpopular if I am delaying the trip to the pub, so I appreciate that. It was on your note-making slide. How do you feel about using Siri or dictating or visual note-making compared to written note-making?
I'm not a zealot for physical notebooks if they don't work for you. And I would say now, these days, I probably make more notes on my iPhone than I do in a physical notebook. I'm not convinced I would trust Siri with my notes. I'm not convinced. We're nearly there with that. And unfortunately, I am not a visual person. I can't draw for shit. So, you know, and I know you're incredibly talented with that. And if I could, I would doodle all day. But no, my notebook has been described as the sort of deranged ravings of a psychopath, because I write in very small block capitals, because I owned one of those Palm Pilots for like 10 years and it ruined my handwriting. Any other questions?
Just one on the punctuation, you mentioned dropping in the dots after ETCs and EGs and things.
Yes.
At what point do you think it becomes confusing to the reader that they end up having to double back because there's not punctuation to help?
Not what they were expecting. It's interesting. This is a subject of some controversy, and Microsoft Word hates it. It puts squiggly red lines when we write EG and we don't put a full stop in. It wants you to. But I took some inspiration from this from The Economist style guide and from The Economist, because they write Mr. without a full stop, and I've always written it with one. And I figured, well, if we can lose it from that, we can lose it from these other things. I think the other thing that probably where we're headed, the direction of travel with EG and etc., is to not use those either. In other words, we might say, for example, or find other ways of saying and so on or and the rest. Because actually they're kind of weird artifacts. They're sort of Latin abbreviations. I mean, who speaks Latin, right? I mean, who knows what those actually mean? They're sort of, they're like vestigial tales. You know, they don't really belong anymore. But that's the next battle. And just as an aside, you know, we have our house style, and I'm still assimilating this radical decision to, you know, go punctuation minimalist. But then we write for HP, and, you know, no, we put them in for that. And we write for Microsoft, and, you know, we write the Microsoft style, and, you know, people have different tastes. And so you know, one of the great things I think I found from doing our own style guide and wrestling with these problems was, first of all, I downloaded all my client style guides, whatever was available, and we, you know, I read through and Claire read through, and we thought about it a lot, and we kind of picked the best bits from all of them. But actually, what it's helped me to do, I'm sure Claire too, is it's kind of being a lot more fluid and flexible. It's like seeing style guides as a choice, and being able to, like a chameleon, shift from one to another and understand why you might not want to use punctuation and why you might, and why it works in some cases and why it doesn't. It's like becoming fluent with a language. So that's probably for you, because I know, of course, I know you, Tristan, and I know your work. That would be my recommendation. It's more like become more comfortable with different style guides and the nuances and differences and the reasons why. For everybody else, don't use punctuation, right? The less the better.
Matthew, you have a slide with numbers and then words. And
Yes.
If you were writing something like £10,
Yes.
would you write it as 2 words or pound
Claire,
sign?
would we write that as 2 words or a 10? If you had, Nick.
Yeah, I found a £10 note.
I found a £10 note. Would we write TENPO pound note? So I can't spell it. Yeah, or would we write £10?
It depends on the audience and the context.
That's
If
good
you're writing
answer.
a long editorial piece, you want the word. If it's a short bullet pointed blog post or type post,
Yeah. I think also currency is a little bit subtle, because you might use the pound sign. Yes. Difficult cases make bad law. Yeah. Let's have a drink. I want to have a longer discussion about that. I can see we're going to spend the next week thinking about that. Right?
I read an invoice that said said 300 lbs. Literally.
Yeah, and that is an example where I would not spell it out, right? Yeah, very clear. Pound sign. Yes, my accountant says writing invoices is my best work. Okay, any more? No? Yes? Anyone? Yes, please.
When you're saying about what people look at on websites, would you suggest sort of like having just something really brief and then taking them to another page if they're interested in that?
Yes.
Or taking them to lower in the page, or thinking about where you would take people next if you've got their attention?
From a purely writing perspective, an inverted pyramid perspective, from a concision and shortness and brevity perspective, absolutely. Give people the option to click more, have fewer words. And if you look at the way that Apple example, that's how they did it. You know, you could click through each of those images to a more... and there was an example, and I didn't use it today for reasons of not being beaten up, but I'm going to tell you anyway and risk it. A Google product and a Microsoft product that did exactly the same thing. The Microsoft page had 1,200 words and the Google page had 221 words, but 3 links to more details. And in my opinion, the Google one, the short one, is the right way to go. But the guy who you want to speak to about the web design implications is Phil in the red shirt at the back. That's the copy opinion. Okay, please.
Can you tell me the names of the 2 books again, please, that were on the slide?
The Style Guide books.
Yeah.
Economist Style Guide, and it's called The Elements of Style, but it's usually referred to as Strunk & White after the authors. S-T-R-U-N-K, Strunk & White. Strunk & White's the one you want. Great, cracking book. I read it at a wedding once. It got me through the day. Right. Okay, on that bombshell, thank you very much. Have a drink. We'll toddle over to the pub when we clear up. Thanks a lot.